This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Look at yourself as a whole and do the fundamentals well, making sure your sleep is good. Ideally 7 to 9 hours for a female. From a dietary perspective and food, the one thing we know for sure is minimising ultra-processed foods and in particular excessive sugars. And then from a social perspective, genuine interaction, quality friendships helps with health, and maybe that can dovetail into how you exercise. And exercising with a bias towards being strong and having good balance, working your core.
Welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday, the pod that fearlessly chats about all things affecting us ladies who are 40 plus fabulous.
Well, and the guys that want to know what we think.
Well, them too. I'm Janet Evans, advertising creative.
And I'm Jenny Woodhouse, semi-retired social worker.
In other words, you're busier than ever. We're J&J and we're super thrilled you're with us, or She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Hey, gorgeous. It's funny how when you're under a certain age, you fall over, but after a certain age, usually 40 plus, fabulous, you have a fall. It's weird, isn't it? I'm not sure what's behind that.
It's ageism.
It is ageism, big time. It's a bit like what Albo did during the Labor campaign when he fell off the back of the stage during a photo call.
So embarrassing.
But at least it ended well for him.
That's true.
And not sometimes as much for us 40 plus fabulous ladies, because I think as much as we'd like to pretend we're still 20 plus fabulous and we still try and do the things that we're always doing, I don't think there's a kind of warning light that goes off in your bedroom that says don't go out and do that, bungee jumping that you used to do, or those serious gymnastics and stuff, or tantric sex or whatever it is. But you do start to become a little bit more fragile, I think, and less agile.
You do.
You?
You do. I've noticed. Noticed.
Have you?
I have noticed.
What have you noticed?
Becoming a little bit more fragile.
And less agile.
And less agile.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, according to a website, which I'm sure we can trust, which says Care Pro Health Services, it says getting older means you're at greater risk of getting injured and should be more aware of things that can lead to different injuries. And these 6 most common injuries to 40 and 50 plus fabulous women are meniscus tear, which is your knee, hip fracture, lower back pain, shoulder bursitis, which sounds absolutely awful, tennis elbow, which won't apply to me, and outer hip pain.
Outer hip pain.
Not inner hip
pain,
but outer hip pain.
Outer hip.
To tell us how we can stay 40 plus fit, plus fabulous, and avoid bursting a wrong move and busting a bursitis or mangling a meniscus, our guest today is Dr. John Best, specialist sports and exercise medicine physician with the Ortho Sports Group in Sydney. Now, in case people listening to this have not heard of Dr. John before, but who hasn't, you might have seen him running onto the field in some of the world's most high-profile rugby union matches.
I've seen him do that.
If you're a footy head.
Yep.
Yeah, I have too. Carrying a little bag usually.
Yes.
Because John was the Wallabies team doctor for 10 years, and he's worked with professional sports clubs galore, including the English Premier League football. He's served on Football Australasia's High Performance Committee, which sounds amazing, and is now on the NRL's Medical Advisory Panel, which is also a very interesting kind of area with all of that kind of HIA, the kind of concussion rules and all of that sort of stuff.
Yes, that's right.
Going on at the moment.
Yep.
And a medical consultant for the Australian Professional Golfers Association.
Golfers don't need a doctor. Seriously, what do they do wrong?
Well, they just walk around, right?
Yeah, whack a ball.
What could possibly go wrong? So, and the list, his list of credentials and stuff is almost a workout in itself. So, John, basically, we don't think you're very well qualified for this conversation, but we've decided to talk to you anyway.
Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
Why do you think us ladies, as we mature, are a bit more prone to injury as we age? Why can't we just keep doing the things we were doing in our 20s?
Look, first of all, can I congratulate you on the great library of information you've got on She Was Born Yesterday. I had a quick look and there's been some great topics, which have been health topics as well, so well done. The answer to your question, Janet, is really, it overlaps for males as well, but there are some unique features for females. And one of the big words I'm going to use, which is a real culprit, is the word sarcopenia. So sarcopenia is the process where, unfortunately, from about the age of 20 onwards, men and women, females more than males, start to lose muscle. And that's the muscle around our long bones, so the muscles that help us walk, stand, get up out of a chair, give us stamina, and help us to adjust if we have an alteration in our surface that we walk on, if we slip or something like that. So muscle loss it's inevitable, but the rate of how you lose muscle is a big feature as to whether or not you can have some vitality and prevent things like falling. The second feature is primarily hormonal. So there are differences between men and women in our what's called our andrology, so our hormonal status. Males tend to have more hormones that help lay down and maintain muscle and also help bone strength, whereas for females it's different. Therefore, your risk of bone thinning, so what's called osteopenia or osteoporosis, that is there. And if you have that combination of muscle weakness with bone thinning and a fall, that adds to your hip fracture classification and your lower back pain and so on.
It's not a good combo then.
Wow.
No.
So at 40 plus, I mean, anecdotally, we seem to need to work even harder than ever before to stay fit and fabulous. Is that true? Or do we just need to be more intentional about what we're doing?
Or do we have to remember to do it?
It depends, I guess, how you want to live. It's an interesting philosophical question more than anything, because we now have this wide area of healthy ageing literature that's there, flourishing, etc. We have research from the supercentenarians, Dan Buettner's work that was done when he worked with National Geographic, and Netflix made a nice series on that. And long story short, I'm 62 now, and about 10 years ago, I started realising I've been going to more funerals and weddings.
Oh, no. Yes.
And so you start to think about how you want to live. And this idea of having some strength and vitality, minimising your medical problems, really, that does mean we have different needs at different stages. By and large, as we get older, we need to do more strength work and we need to do more balance work, and we don't have to do as much volume. When we're younger, we can do more volume. So if you want to be a triathlete, the best time to do that is probably in your late teens through to your mid-30s. You can carry on more than that, but once you get to my age, it's really all about your strength, your balance, so agility, and having some degree of heart training, but not big volume stuff.
Wow. So how can we work on that balance and strength training? What are the best things for that?
Look, a couple of things, first of all, about the female body that is really quite relevant, and COVID helped us here. During COVID, people's gyms closed. Some people discovered exercise because they were doing training in their own home. They got bored. They started doing circuit training, and we saw
circuits of the lounge room and things like that.
Circuits of the lounge room, and also things like activities using their body with different types of little stations, so squats and lunges and push-ups. We saw some interesting patterns, and personally I did a couple of papers on this with some colleagues where females far more than males really started hurting themselves at home.
Oh.
So they were doing things that they weren't used to, like deep squats and lunges with weights on their arms, push-ups, dips, which is a movement where you put your arms on the back of a chair and move up and down. And many females are hypermobile, double-jointed.
Oh.
When you look at females versus males, that figure is closer to 18% compared to, say, 4%. And with that, if you have some people who inherit this double-jointedness, they hurt themselves. So their joints get pushed through too many angles with too much load, and we started seeing shoulder and hip problems. So to answer your question, how do you get strong? You've got to know your profile. You've got to know a little bit about your genetics. And if you're someone who has been untrained, you do need some good advice. You need to have either an experienced personal trainer or an exercise physiologist or a good quality physio who knows you as a starting point.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting because I always thought of physios as being people you saw after you get injured, you know, and they fix you up.
Which they do.
But obviously that's part of what you do, but that's not the whole story. Is that right?
It's changed quite a lot. So when I was a boy and did my medicine and did my specialty training. So in the early 90s, a bit over 30 years ago, I started as a specialist. We saw that physiotherapists were there to diagnose and treat and be involved with some injury prevention. Then there was the development of what's called exercise physiology. So that's one of the sports sciences which looks at how the human body works, how it stays fit. And exercise physiologists have been very involved and probably more involved than most sports physios with things like strength and conditioning, rehabilitation after cancer treatment, rehabilitation after major illnesses, some forms of surgery. So there is an overlap. And when you look at an athletic team, so your professional league or union team for men and women, they often have both. So the physio is there to do injury treatment, diagnosis, and the exercise physiologist does more strength and conditioning and planning.
That makes sense. Now, John, last week I went to Lord Howe Island.
Very nice.
It was exceedingly nice, except for the day that I thought I was going on a little 500-metre walk, but turns out I accidentally climbed to the top of a very high mountain.
Mount Gower?
No, not Mount Gower, the other one, Kim's Lookout. And I didn't quite mean to, but every time I passed someone, they said I was nearly there, so keep going. They were all liars. But I did finally make it to the top. Was that a foolish thing for me to do at age 65 when I'm not very fit?
How long did it take?
7 hours?
It did not take 7 hours. I don't know, maybe an hour.
No, I don't think that's crazy. When you look at exercise guidelines, people generally have to do something every day. And if you look at specific numbers, you're really needing to look at around 30 minutes most days. And then there's a classification regarding whether it's medium level or vigorous. And you can work that out based on your degree of breathlessness. So your issue is as you walked uphill, you were quite breathless.
Yes.
If you were someone who had a cardiac or a heart history and you were untrained and you did that out of the blue for close to an hour, there's a bit of a risk with that. Your risk of injury, though, isn't particularly high with that amount. If you were, say, someone who was doing 2 or 3 times that amount, so you've decided, yes, I'm going to do the Camino, away we go, or I'm going to go trekking in Nepal, and we're going to walk for 4 hours most days for 7 to 10 days, so that's a common active holiday, you definitely would need to train for that. But as a one-off, something that you could do fairly slowly within an hour is not bad. But because you were breathless, if we put a heart rate monitor on you or if you had an Apple Watch that was working, you would have been close to your maximum for a fair bit of that. And unless you're used to that, you've got to be a bit careful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I didn't have a choice. I had to sit down about every 10 metres.
Yeah.
I was nearly vertical.
Wow.
I was very proud of myself. But
yeah, wow, that's impressive. I'm impressed. Yeah, well, look at you. You look terrific.
I do.
You know.
Thank you.
John, the other thing you mentioned was balance. And people tend to, as we know, have a fall after a certain age, but it doesn't seem to be related to anything much. Like it seems like they can sort of fall over pretty easily after a certain age. So how do we improve our balance and prevent that happening?
Look, it's falls prevention is a major area, and in Australia we've got terrific leaders. I'm going to mention Professor Jackie Close, who is at the Prince of Wales and has an Order of Australia on her and recognising her work on falls prevention. When you look at why people fall, it's complex because some people can be strong but have medical conditions that contribute to dizziness, or they may have early Parkinson's disease where their ability to move and adjust is affected. So long story short, you're wanting to train yourself as much as you can by challenging yourself in positions that you can't normally do. So for both of you, if you don't do any balance training, a good way to start would be just to stand on one leg when you brush your teeth.
I can do that.
I've tried that.
Oh, have you?
I just fell over.
Yeah. How did that go for you? Not well.
With your other hand, you put it on the vanity to balance yourself. And if you find that easy, you close your eyes as you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
You need to do a lot of balance training to make it effective. It needs to be a minimum of 2 or 3 minutes every day. And this is where forms of yoga can be quite helpful, particularly when you're standing. So for many women, they combine strength and balance together with something like forms of yoga, gym-based training, or dancing and dance manoeuvres. Yeah. So when you're training your brain to adjust to different positions and so on, it's all about challenge and adjusting, and building up.
So falling has more to do with what's happening in the brain rather than this muscle, like wasting away thing that you were talking about, does it?
They overlap. My next sort of word after the sarcopenia word is frailty. We typically will use the word or describe someone as frail with ageing. She's really frail now, he's very frail now. But it's actually a syndrome. It's a collection of conditions which lead to an increased risk of falling. We can measure things like strength with grip strength. We can measure function with testing like speed of walking or the number of getting up and down off your chair, what's called sit to stand, and also a thing called an up and go. The geriatric world and the rehab world have come together, which overlaps a little bit in my sports medicine world, where we have really simple tools. I might have someone who's referred to me because they've got osteoarthritis in their knee. They may be in their 60s. While they're with me, I would often test their grip strength. I'd often see how they are getting out of a chair, and I'll test their balance. And I would actually say to them, I know you've got a sore knee, but your risk of falling is quite high. And that could be because they've deconditioned themselves because of their arthritic knee.
That makes sense.
And really, this is where a good GP is gold. Everyone needs a good GP, and we have terrific general practice standards in Australia. And if you do have a GP who is dismissive and says to you, look, you're just getting old, you probably should find another doctor.
Yeah.
You just tell your doctor, well, you're just getting fired. So, you can work both ways.
See, what's interesting is there's now research looking at people in their 80s, looking at the benefits of exercise therapy, so strength and balance training for men and women who are over 80. And when you look at elderly and non-elderly, there's different classifications, but this group was overlooked until about the last 15 or 20 years. Now we know that people live well beyond that, and we want people ideally to be able to flourish and not hurt themselves. And for what it's worth, the fitter you are as you go through your older years, the fitter you are, the more likely you are to die through a sudden death rather than a chronic illness.
That is extremely encouraging.
Oh, that's very comforting, John.
It was a nice...
We'll end the talk there.
Good to know. So tell us what sort of exercises are good for us, 40-plus women.
Let's look at a case scenario. I'll describe a journalist, a 45-year-old journalist who came to see me because of a sore shoulder. She was going through premature menopause because of a thyroid problem. She'd had a couple of goes getting fit, but she'd keep hurting herself. Her background was she played netball at school. She got into her career, and apart from doing a bit of walking, hadn't really done any strength training. So we've got someone who's motivated. By her own admission, she's let herself go a little bit. She used those words. And now we've got a bit of an injury where she was developing some inflammation in the shoulder and what's called a frozen shoulder. So the first thing I say to someone like that is, it's great that you're here and you're going to do really well because you've got a great attitude. Let me know how much time you've set aside for your health and fitness. And basically, she joined a gym and is prepared to put in the equivalent of, say, 45 minutes every other day. So from that, we want her to train her heart a little bit, so cardiovascular training, and we did a combination of walking, using a bike, and using the elliptical machine in the gym, where she stays conversational. So that means she says, hi, my name is Alice, how are you? That puts her at medium level, which means it's safe, and you get a heart benefit. So she would do that for 25 minutes, and her other 20 minutes would be primarily strength training. And she was guided then with someone to work primarily on her trunk, her core, her muscles that pull her shoulders back, and getting the big muscles to work well. So we like people to do some bodyweight squats. We like people to do an activity called a leg press machine or to do some calf raises. We don't really want people to jump in and lift heavy weights above their head because you can really hurt your shoulders with that, hurt the neck, compress the spine. So everyone gets excited about the core, which is the zone from your diaphragm through to the floor of the pelvis. And that's why Pilates has become so popular.
I was going to ask you about Pilates, actually, because my GP said, Janet, you really should do Pilates. And I'm like, I just hadn't quite, I walked there. Does that count? I walked past it.
Depends how far away.
Does that count as exercise?
If you walk past with good posture, it counts.
That's right.
I did a squat when I picked something up.
No, there is a dad joke about Pilates.
Mm-hmm.
What's the main problem with Pilates?
We give up.
It's working out who wins.
There it is.
Now, truly, the history of Pilates is fascinating. So Joseph Pilates was a prisoner of war. He invented Pilates by really training himself in an enclosed space as a prisoner of war.
What?
So he used his own body weight at different angles. So when you look at Pilates and, again, the core, so we're looking at the rib area to the floor of the pelvis, it's a bit like a can of soft drink, okay? And there's a concept called crushing the can where you want all the muscles, top and bottom and around, to be working. So the top muscle is the diaphragm, the bottom muscles is the floor of the pelvis, and in many women that can be very weak, particularly if you've had some rough pregnancies, where incontinence can be an issue, for example. And then you have all the muscles that envelop the abdomen, the abdominal muscles that wrap around. So Pilates can be done really simply on the floor. That's called mat Pilates, where you do movements where you could be lying flat, just tilting your pelvis or lifting your hips up. They're called bridging. And there are many really short courses for free online, and it's almost impossible to hurt yourself doing mat Pilates.
Wow.
Okay.
Then you've got more fancy pants stuff, so reformer Pilates, using machines where there's more resistant equipment at different angles, where the results are definitely better, but you can't just jump in and do that. So I have seen people who've hurt themselves, who've strained their hip tendons, etc., by going into that too early. Pilates makes people walk away feeling that they're stretched out a bit. So there's a stretch component, that they're holding themselves better in their trunk area, and that gives you a platform for other things. So a lot of rugby players now, men and women, will incorporate forms of Pilates to prevent injury, to have a good core, to reduce your risk of things like hamstring injuries, groin injuries, and so on.
It's also because they heard that dad joke about winning, so they want to win. That's why athletes do it. But even as you're speaking, Jenny and I are sort of pulling ourselves upright and sort of putting our shoulders back.
Doing pelvic floor
You do tend
exercises.
to, yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Speak for yourself, but, I'm more of the abdominal.
You're the
I'm crunching the can or drinking a can or something. I don't know.
Crushing
What
the
you
can.
doing,
Crushing the can.
Crushing it. That's it, yeah.
better.
So, it's gorgeous. So in your role as team doctor to the Wallabies, what kinds of injuries did those guys get as compared to the rest of us, mere mortals,
Oh, well, look,
As opposed to their mothers.
Yeah.
We've published this, which is very good. We've got a lot of injury data in all the football codes, but personally I've been involved with the rugby union. So I had 15 years with Australian rugby, and as my mum said, the Wallabies was doing well when I was there.
Yeah, they were. I remember.
But we had different injury patterns. So when I started, the game was moving from amateur to professional. I did 3 Rugby World Cups with them, and as it became more professional, we saw different injury patterns. So in the early days, we saw a lot of groin injuries, hamstrings, so a lot of soft tissue stuff and some shoulder trauma. As the players got stronger and can do more conditioning, we really tried to eliminate the soft tissue injuries. So no groin or hamstring. Shoulder injuries stayed fairly high, and then we had a bit more concussion, and partly because technique of tackling was changed and so on. And the big challenge now for women is we've got this wonderful opportunity females have to be professional athletes. I wouldn't say it's come out of nowhere. The Wallaroos, the Australian women's rugby team, I had a little bit to do with them when they were starting. I've got to say that my female patients who are professional footy players, from a motivation and courage perspective, they're right up there. They're so dedicated to their profession. And one thing that might interest you is when you look at their ability to train and get stronger, their strength to body weight ratios. So what do I mean by that? So let's say I'm 80 kilos and I lift a certain weight, and then you work out What's that as a percentage? Women who have been in a training setup for 2-3 years, they're comparable to men in their strength to body weight ratios, particularly when it comes to the back and the trunk, less so with the arms. So women can get quite strong and have good muscle development that is very protective for them with the right program over time.
Yeah, it's interesting. What have you learnt from the women in your life, John, in terms of personalising health? You've got a wife, daughters, granddaughters, a mum, sisters, et cetera, et cetera. Have they influenced you or shaped how you work with women?
Yes, yeah. So look, I went to boys' schools and enjoyed competitive sport, and I didn't quite understand the idea of doing sport and not competing. And what I've learned from my family is there's a lot of fun in just doing it. So I underestimated things like dance, and we now know that for activities such as dance, there can be very high levels of strength, fitness, balance, and also good brain training. I think also the social benefits of doing things together rather than just turning up, having a competition and leaving. So shared experience. I think we see that a lot more with women. They're much better with that. And I think that's important in terms of how we live. So when you look at our well-being, body, mind, spirit, it's good that we don't silo things too much. And there are ways of exercising that can cover all of that, I think. So enjoying and the benefits of it without needing to compete all the time is one thing that I've learned.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So have you joined up for the ballroom dancing?
The salsa competition?
The salsa competition, yeah.
Well,
26.
My dear wife, Megan, who was a palliative care doctor and now a university professor in ethics, we did dancing for a while. Yeah, we found other things to do though. So for us in terms of what we do together, and I'm very thankful. We've got a great marriage. We've got a 30-plus-year-old marriage that we keep building on. But active holidays are probably the big thing we like to do. So where we go, we look at certain things we can do with a walk or a cycle or a swim, and we incorporate that with the cultural side of things, the people we're going with, that sort of thing.
I think it must be difficult, though, if your partner doesn't have much capacity,
active.
Or just doesn't enjoy it, whereas you want to really go on that kind of holiday. What do you suggest there in terms of marriage counselling?
Oh, look, I think on a serious note, we need to just talk a little bit about disability and fitness. So I've worked a bit, as you know, with refugees, and that included explosion victims and so on, and they had totally uneducated. So a lot of our Iranian patients and Iraqi patients that we saw who just had really basic needs. So I think what we've been talking about is almost luxury. But I think in a scenario where people are in a close relationship and there's a real disparity between ability, I think working out what you'd all enjoy. And certainly I've found, say with my mum, who has had a lot of orthopaedic and neurological problems, she functions quite well in the pool with sort of an aquarobics thing. So in their retirement village, I'm often in the pool with her. We've got a routine, and the 30 minutes goes really quickly because we talk and laugh, and there's a set of 8 or 10 different movements or exercises. So I think having a good conversation about what's enjoyable. Pleasure helps compliance, your ability to stick to something. Saying it's going to be painful doesn't work for everybody. But I think getting the message that preventing muscle loss and maintaining balance as a minimum is a key.
That's very helpful.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that because what you were talking about before, working with asylum seekers. Yeah, because you're co-founder of an organisation called ICFA, which stands for Injury Clinic for Asylum Seekers and Refugees in Western Sydney, where you volunteer. Lucky them. Tell us why you decided to do that.
Well, I had a spiritual crisis. So I'm a Christian man. Since the age of 24, I've had the pleasure of enjoying and following Jesus and his teachings. Around about 10 years ago, the church we're in, I was in a men's group, we were doing some studies of stories that Jesus told, parables. So he uses these devices to teach things. And the very famous story of the Good Samaritan came up. At the time, I was seeing some refugees who were being sent to my clinic through some women who worked with them to help them come out of detention into community, and they were helping them readjust. And these women were sort of wives of doctor friends of mine. So these people, these refugees, had undiagnosed problems, and they were driving like almost 2 hours to see me. So from far western Sydney to Randwick through the traffic. And with the Good Samaritan, I know you guys know the story. It's really about someone who saw something, felt it and acted. And I had 3 nights in a row I couldn't sleep. And I talked to Megan and she said, look, and don't ignore this. I wouldn't say she said don't be a knucklehead, but she said just don't ignore this. Maybe God wants you to do something about it. So I phoned a friend who has a clinic in Western Sydney and I said, I'd like to work in your clinic for free. I'd like to use your reception staff for free so I can start a clinic for refugees, and we're going to bring in 1 or 2 of our registrar doctors who'll get good experience as well.
Brilliant.
We started that. We did it for a particular group. We ran it for almost 7 years. We've closed it down now because all our patients have now got Medicare status and have GPs, and some are happy to see, and I've sort of farmed them out to different doctors. SBS did a little story on us that was a real highlight of my career and for us who all worked in it.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, just understanding how little education. So we're talking about men and women who have never been told smoking's really bad for you. They don't really know about nutrition, their ability, they've had chronic pain. They haven't. One fellow, he had a shoulder injury and his shoulder dislocated at least 100 times while he was in detention.
Yeah.
And he's a 35-year-old with an arthritic shoulder, which is a very difficult clinical scenario. So, it's quite humbling.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you for doing that. That's wonderful.
It was very good.
Yeah.
So gorgeous. Your hobbies include physical training, which I find incredibly hard to believe, backgammon, French comedies and religious art. What an interesting mix. What's your favourite French comedy?
Probably one called Tais-toi, which means shut up.
Was that a veiled comment to us? Or?
No.
Sure.
It's about a 20-year-old film. We love it. It's about 2 prison escapees. Gerald Depardieu is one of the actors and Jean Reno. It's just hysterical. And I think the French do comedy as good as anyone. It's got beautiful scenery and so on.
So actually, it's actually a good workout when you're laughing for your core, I think.
Also releases endorphins.
If you watched an hour and a half of French comedies, I reckon you wouldn't have to do Pilates after that. Am I right, John? Is that technically correct?
If you're going to be watching something for a while, get a yoga mat or go on your carpet on the floor and do at least 10 or 12 minutes of abs.
Some mat Pilates.
Good hint.
Abs.
That's a great hint. So what's your favourite piece of religious art?
Well, this is sort of new to me. I grew up spelling culture with a K. I went to a school that I didn't do history or art at all. It was sort of all maths and science. And then I had a very interesting experience when we were living and working in London. It was about 20 years ago, and we went to the National Gallery in London. We were with our daughters who were early teenagers then, and my wife Megan, and they had a Caravaggio exhibition of his top 10. And I agreed to go. I went in there. There was one painting of his depiction it's a story of David and Goliath, and it's David with Goliath's head. It was an extremely violent painting. I had a reaction just like I was at a really good rugby game in terms of really enjoying the moment and wanting to sort of see a bit more. And then I just opened myself up a bit to religious art and storytelling through art. Not so much icons, but more about styles of art and how that does tell a story, bearing in mind that literacy rates haven't always been high. I wouldn't say he's my favourite, but he's a violent artist who had a violent life. Yeah. I enjoy that.
Last of all, yet another one of your clinical interests includes preventing burnout. I was interested in that. How can we 40-plus fab ladies prevent burnout?
So, yeah, this is an interesting one. So when people talk about burnout, we're really talking about our body, mind, spirit, our being failing, having enough. That can manifest itself in different ways. So, for example, if you went and deprived yourself of sleep for a week, your body's not going to handle that very well. Or if you eat really badly for a couple of weeks, the same thing. Burnout's a phenomenon where your ability to bounce back when you're tired is is poor. So
okay.
it doesn't mean just being tired. So it's normal to have fatigue where you have these patches where you might be working extra hard or things have come up or a bit too much on the plate and you've got to somehow adjust. So in the athletic world, this is a really big thing. You don't want your athletes getting close to burnout when it's a big event. So we had mechanisms of measuring that to prevent getting to that edge. So when it's in the pre-season, you can have people training hard and being fit and you accept certain levels of fatigue. But when it's things like finals and so on, you actually want to be sharp and at your best. So we then looked at applying this to the corporate world. So executive burnout. So people who are high performers who have a lot of travel, sleep deprivation, they disconnect from family, they may not exercise as much, they have reporting seasons for things. And now I think for the general worker where we're finding in our society we're so connected and wired that our ability to have boundaries is poorer, our ability to say no, fear of missing out, all of these things are complex. I'm a very low social media user.
Yeah, we've noticed we could hardly find you.
No,
crazy.
That's right.
No TikTok, nothing.
I'll need to start something because I've written a men's health book I'm trying to get published.
That sounds great.
Yes.
Write one for women and we'll be right there. We'll interview you about it.
Well, I think a lot of the people who buy it will be women.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yes.
At least people who love their men. So, so I think with the burnout idea, if this is something where it's a recurring theme for people, and for me, I know what happens if I'm on the edge. I get this sort of funny twitch over my eye. I can be a little bit cranky pants, at home. My wife has a green light to tell me if that's
Literally?
the case. Yeah, she does. She does.
Okay.
And then it's putting things in place to freshen up. So what does that mean? So for me, it tends to be outdoor spaces with some sort of physical activity, not drinking alcohol for a while, possibly, something like that. Yeah.
Or drinking more alcohol and doing less outer space. That could work as well.
Depends.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Usually doesn't, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Probably not.
alcohol, comfort drug in that setting.
There you go. Well, gorgeous. Look, we have only really just touched on this topic. We have fallen for you. We haven't had a fall. We've fallen for you. But, so we'd actually love to have you back sometime to talk a little bit more about all sorts of things because, there's so much to talk about. But basically, to summarise, I guess, if we want to stay the distance as 40 plus fabulous and end up as a 90 plus fabulous people we were talking about earlier, what is your best advice?
Okay. My best advice is look at yourself as a whole and do the fundamentals well. So making sure your sleep is good. So women need more than men. And
that's for sure.
Ideally 7 to 9 hours for a female, closer to 9. Number 2, from a dietary perspective and food, we all have our different metabolisms. There are people who can get away with eating anything, not so much for everyone else. The one thing we know for sure is minimising ultra-processed foods, so foods that our grandparents don't quite recognise, which are a good example, and in particular excessive sugars. And on top of that, quality protein. And I say this respectfully to our vegan and vegetarian audience. You can get good protein from plants, but meat-based protein is far superior. And then from a social perspective, genuine interaction, quality friendships helps with health, and maybe that can dovetail into how you exercise. And exercising with a bias towards being strong and having good balance, working your core. And you can do that really by putting time zones, 30 minutes most days.
And so really, but do you think joining a gym or finding that personal trainer or going to Pilates would really, really help most of us 40 plus fabulous women?
That's what a lot of women do when I see them in my clinic. So my practice has shifted from being 80% male to probably 2/3 female now.
Wow.
Because I've got an interest in shoulder and hip disorders, and we see more of that in the weekend warrior and females, etc. But prior to spending all the money joining a gym, I think working out, there's a lot of wasted gym memberships out there. Are you going to really use it? And if you've got a buddy to go with, you're more likely to use it as well. And then when you're there, get them to assess you, so your technique's good and so on.
That's good. And the
Yeah.
other important piece of advice, which you've already given us, is stand on one leg while you clean your teeth for 2 minutes.
That's a good starting point.
Yep.
Or for 3 minutes, wasn't it?
Between 2 and 3, I think. it
Oh,
was.
right.
Yeah.
And
I
if
might start with
people come
2.
to the door, you could stand on one leg.
could
There's
hop
all
to the
sorts of
door.
scenarios where
Yeah.
you can stand on one leg and still have fun and improve your balance.
There it
you
is.
go.
You've heard it first. And she wasn't born yesterday.
Thanks, John. It's been amazing chatting with
It's a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Good on you
you're
both. It's a great
amazing.
enterprise.
Gorgi, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this ep as much as we did.
And why not join us for more insider goss and sneaky pics on our Facebook group called, strangely enough, She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
So jump on the socials and see you next time, or rather, chat soon.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.